have you ever tried to count the stars in the sky? Well, not in New York City. We have so many lights at night here that it's hard to see stars. But on vacation outside of New York City, you can see so many stars in the sky at night. It would take all night if you tried to count them. And you would probably count some stars twice and forget to count other stars. Let's just say it would be impossible. Almost as hard as trying to count how many grains of sand are in a beach pail. Can you imagine having a family as big as there are stars in the sky? That would be crazy. It would be so hard to get peace and quiet. In today's Bible story, God makes a promise to someone that he would have as many descendants as stars in the sky. You'll find the story in Genesis chapter 12, verses 1 through 9. After God confused everyone's language, people spread throughout the land and forgot all about the huge tower they were building. Unfortunately, they also forgot about God. But there was one man who didn't forget God, and his name was Abram. One night, God spoke to Abram and made a covenant with him. Do you remember what a covenant is? It's basically a promise or agreement. During God's covenant with Abram, God made 3 big promises. First, God told Abram it was time to move from his home. God promised to give Abram an amazing new land that would be for him and his descendants. Second, God promised to give him and his wife a baby. God said that Abram would have as many children in his family as there are stars in the sky. Third, God promised that the whole world would be blessed because of Abram. All 3 of these promises from God were amazing, but each of them had one problem. God promised to give Abram an amazing new land, but the land was Canaan, and it was already filled with people who were blind to God's love. They didn't know or follow God, and they weren't just going to give their land over to Abram without a fight. Abram couldn't see how God could possibly give him this amazing new land. God promised to give Abram as many children in his family as there are stars in the sky. The problem with that was that Abram and his wife were already too old to have kids. They could have been grandparents. Abram couldn't see how God could possibly give him even one baby, let alone a huge family. God promised that the whole world would be blessed because of Abram. But Abram was just a regular old man who raised sheep and cattle. Abram couldn't see how God could possibly bless the whole world through a simple guy like him. Do you think these problems stopped Abram from believing God's promise? Nope. Even though Abram couldn't see how God could possibly do all of these things for him, he had faith that God would make all of his promises come true. So, in faith, Abram packed up all of his belongings, gathered his family, and headed into the wilderness toward the new land God had promised him. Do you think it would have been easier for Abram to believe God's promises if he could have seen them with his own eyes? Yeah, probably. Sometimes it's hard to believe in things you can't see. But there are things we believe in that we don't see. We can't see the air or gravity. We can't see these things, but we can't see what they do. Air we know exists because we breathe it, and sometimes we can feel it moving. And we can tell that gravity exists because, well, things fall down or stay on the ground instead of floating through the air. It's just like that with God. Even though we can't see God, we can see the things He does. We can look outside and see His creation. We can see how He answers our prayers, and we can see how He changes our lives when we surrender to Him. So even though we can't see God, we can have faith that He exists and His promises will come true. Today's Bible verse actually tells us what faith is. Hebrews 11:1. Now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. Hebrews 11:1. Abram couldn't see God or see how God's promises could possibly come true, but he had faith. He trusted God and that God would keep His promises, and He did. Even though Abram and his wife were old enough to be great-grandparents, God kept His promise of giving them a son. And eventually, their grandchildren, great-grandchildren, great-great-grandchildren, and great-great-great-grandchildren. There were as many as the stars in the sky. And after Abram died, God gave his family their own land called the Promised Land, known today as Israel. If God kept His promises to Abram, wouldn't He also keep His promises to us? We can trust that the answer to this is yes. We can know that God is real and His promises are true. We can have faith in Him even though we cannot see Him.